The Silver Ridge Mountains in central Alaska are a masterpiece of jagged peaks and emerald valleys, but their beauty masks a predatory silence that can swallow a man whole. In these ancient woods, a mistake isn't just a lapse in judgment, it's a death sentence. The wind howls through the Sitka spruces like the whispers of ghosts, carrying the scent of damp earth and something far more primal. For Mark and his veteran guide, Elias, this wasn't just another expedition. They were tracking the apex of North American predators, the grizzly. Mark, armed with a custom .300 Win Mag and the arrogance of a man who believed money could buy safety, felt like the king of the forest. Elias, however, moved with a quiet, heavy dread, knowing that the mountain never truly submits to anyone. They began their ascent through a valley choked by a fog so thick it felt like breathing cold wool. Every snap of a dry twig under Mark's expensive boots sounded like a gunshot in the oppressive stillness. "Elias, do you think we'll bag him today?" Mark whispered, his voice trembling with a mix of excitement and nerves. Elias stopped dead, tilting his head to catch a scent on the wind. He pointed toward a cluster of jagged rocks above them. "Nature doesn't deal in luck, Mark, it deals in preparation and consequence. Keep your mouth shut. Something is watching us." A cold shiver raced down Mark's spine. He scanned the perimeter, seeing nothing but twisted shadows and skeletal branches. Yet, the forest had changed. The birds had fallen silent, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath. A few miles in, near a silty riverbank, they found them. Tracks. Massive, deep indentations in the mud that were still filling with water. The bear was close. Dangerously close. Elias knelt, tracing the claws with a weathered finger. "This isn't just any bear," he murmured, his face pale. "This is Old Midnight. The locals say he's a demon in fur. He doesn't fear humans, he hunts them." Mark checked the safety on his rifle, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. As they navigated a narrow limestone gorge, the nightmare began. A shower of pebbles cascaded from the ridge above. Elias dove behind a granite boulder, dragging Mark with him. Through the mist, a gargantuan shape materialized. It was a grizzly of impossible proportions, nearly 11 feet tall, with fur the color of a thunderstorm and eyes that reflected a cold, calculating intelligence. It wasn't just wandering, it was scent masking, circling back on its pursuers. Mark saw an opening. His pulse thundered in his ears, drowning out Elias's frantic whisper, "Don't shoot yet, you don't have the angle." But Mark's ego pulled the trigger. The roar of the rifle shattered the valley's silence. The bullet grazed the bear's massive shoulder, tearing through muscle but missing the vitals. It was the worst possible outcome. They hadn't killed the beast. They had offended it. The transformation was instantaneous. The bear didn't flee. It let out a guttural, bone-shaking roar and charged. 1,000 pounds of muscle and fury hurtled down the slope at 40 miles per hour. "Run!" Elias screamed. They scrambled through a dense thicket of devil's club, the thorns tearing at their skin, but the rhythmic thud of heavy paws grew louder behind them. Mark looked back and saw the bear's maw dripping with foam, its eyes locked onto his with a terrifying, singular focus. This wasn't animal instinct, it was a vendetta. They reached the mouth of a shallow limestone cave. Elias shoved Mark into the dark crevice just as the bear's claws raked the air where he had been standing a second before. The beast slammed its body against the rocks, trying to squeeze into the narrow opening. The sound of its breathing, a wet, raspy growl, echoed off the cave walls, filling the space with the stench of rotted salmon and death. Mark collapsed, his high-tech rifle discarded in the dirt, realizing that all his gear was useless against a force of nature that refused to die. Night fell, bringing a bone-chilling Alaskan frost. The bear didn't leave. It paced the entrance, a dark sentinel in the moonlight, occasionally swiping at the rock face with enough power to spark stone. "We can't wait for sunrise," Elias whispered, his voice raspy. "Hypothermia will kill us before the bear does. We need to move." They had a small canister of white gas and some extra base layers in their packs. Elias crafted a makeshift torch, his hands steady despite the horror outside. The plan was suicide. "I'll draw him out with the fire," Elias said, looking Mark in the eye with a grim finality. "You bolt for the ridge and head straight for the skiff on the river. Don't look back, just run." Mark tried to protest, but the look in the old man's eyes silenced him. They lit the torch, the flare of orange light momentarily blinding the beast. They burst out of the cave. The grizzly recoiled from the flames and Mark sprinted into the darkness, his lungs burning as he leaped over fallen logs and jagged rocks. Behind him, the forest erupted in chaos. He heard Elias's defiant shout, followed by a sickening crunch and the bear's triumphant bellow. Mark wanted to stop, to scream, but the instinct to survive pushed him forward. He reached the riverbank, the water black and freezing. The skiff was there, bobbing in the current. He scrambled aboard and yanked the starter cord. The engine sputtered and died. Snap. The sound of a branch breaking came from the tree line. Mark yanked the cord again. The engine roared to life just as a bloodied figure stumbled out of the brush. It was Elias, his jacket shredded, his arm hanging limp at his side. And right behind him, emerging from the shadows like a nightmare made flesh, was Midnight. The bear lunged. Mark grabbed the emergency flare gun from the boat's console and fired directly at the bear's chest. The brilliant red phosphorus ignited, startling the predator just long enough for Elias to throw himself into the icy water. Mark hauled Elias over the gunwale as the bear stood on the bank, a towering silhouette against the moon. It didn't roar this time, it simply watched them drift into the current, its glowing eyes a reminder that they were leaving with their lives only because the mountain had allowed it. As they drifted toward civilization, the silence returned, but it was a different kind of silence. Elias looked at his mangled arm and then at Mark. "You see, boy," he wheezed, "men think they are the masters of the wild because they have steel and lead. But out here, you're just meat with an attitude. We didn't hunt that bear. That bear hunted us to remind us who we really are." Mark never hunted again. The expensive rifle remained at the bottom of the Silver Ridge River, a hollow tribute to his arrogance. He spent the rest of his life working in wildlife conservation, telling this story to anyone who thought the wilderness was a playground. He learned the hardest lesson of all. Nature doesn't need your respect to exist, but you need its mercy to survive. To this day, the legend of Old Midnight haunts the campfire stories of Alaska, a grim reminder that some shadows in the woods are better left undisturbed. The Blood Covenant wasn't a victory. It was a survival pact, written in fear and signed in scars.